We are with Ryan. Is it Hagan or Hagen?
Hagan.
Hagan. Okay, Ryan
Yeah.
Hagan. He's out of Nashville. He is a singer, songwriter, and psychic medium, which is my bing. Super excited to talk about that. So I'm going to turn it over to Ryan and let him introduce himself and all the amazing things he's doing.
Yeah. Well, you got it right. So singer-songwriter. Also had in another life within this lifetime, I was in corporate America doing consulting and marketing, kind of sold out. And then the universe opened the door for me to do some pretty cool stuff with my music. So that's kind of my transition out of the world of the normal into the more creative, the creative arts. Had a bit of a spiritual awakening, sort of rediscovered things from my early life that I had otherwise kind of tried to suppress. I was raised conservative Christian, which is okay, no judgment about faith traditions or anything like that, but not so welcoming to some of the beliefs that I have now. Mm-hmm. So it was pretty wild there for about 3-4 years. A lot of changes. The pandemic was nuts for my music career because the very time you would expect people to be suffering, my career actually started to take off. And then it opened the door for me to start using some of my, let's call them abilities.
Okay.
So I have a private practice here for myself with mental health coaching, as well as using my spiritual gifts or abilities, and still doing the singer-songwriter thing. So I got a lot going on, but it keeps me busy and keeps things interesting. So
yeah, I love that. I love those kind of very contrasting kind of mixes that people have. And I'd say, the interesting thing about you, especially with the music and the kind of the abilities, the psychic mediumship, and even I think you, what I read about, you having Reiki practice and things like that, or is that like crux between otherworldly and creativity, right? And how that kind of merges. So I'm super interested to get into that with you. Before we do, though, I really want to know about your epiphany and how the mediumship came about.
Yeah. So actually, when I was really young, I had a lot of experiences. Actually, I meet so many people, even skeptics, who they can all say that they've seen something or heard something or experienced something. My sort of telltale was when I was actually looking backwards as a child, and I'm like, oh my God, I thought my maternal grandmother was just hanging out with our family. She had passed away years before I was ever born. And so I knew what she looked like. I sort of had an awareness of kind of her energy, what somebody's smell would be or what somebody would feel like just being in the room or around. And I can remember distinctly I had started to try to learn how to swim, and we had a pool in the home that I grew up in until I was about 4 or 5. Mm-hmm. And I had kind of lost my consciousness, and I was kind of coming back. It was one of those moments where you're like holding your breath and then you get dizzy. Mm-hmm. And then I just look up and I see her fully clothed, just standing by the pool, and she's like, "You're gonna be okay. Just breathe." And I'm like, getting my breath back. And then I'm sitting at dinner, and she's over there in the kitchen, and so that was my first real experience of having kind of one foot on the other side.
Yeah.
The spoiler alert is that I actually think we all have some connectivity to other dimensions or other worlds. It's just a matter of whether we're kind of attuned to it and can access it. Mm-hmm. And I think because it's taught to us to be sort of crazy business, we suppress it. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what happened with me. And it became something that actually spooked me and was scary and seen as kind of like a curse, or maybe it was of the devil or something, versus, I have this sort of proclivity to be able to pick up on things. So that was my first real experience with it. And then I'd say part B of that is that right around when I was 7, we had just moved. there was a very crotchety old woman that lived next door to us, and she wound up actually taking her own life in her home.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And, I just remember waking up in the middle of the night, like 4 a.m. or something, and ambulances and police cars were by the house. And so we knew something had happened. Within a week, we found out what happened. And that weekend, I'm in my bed at like 9 o'clock, like trying to go to bed, for my Monday classes or whatever, school. And I'm like, there's something in here. And I can see sort of like a mist. And then I just pull the covers over my head. And the only reference for God that I had at the time was Jesus. So I was like praying to Jesus, like, take this away. I'm so scared. Because I was taught that it was bad. I was taught that it was spooky. So, and for better or worse, it was honored, only for it to all come sort of flooding back with a vengeance during my spiritual awakening, during my adulthood. So I would have little moments here or there sort of in the interim, but it wasn't really accessible in the way that I'm using it now. So that's kind of the trajectory.
Oh my God. So, I mean, I agree with you that all of us kind of have this something there. It's that, like, I don't know if it's, with you, it's you talking about a spiritual awakening. I don't know what it kind of takes sometimes to either jump into it or just allow it in, right? Or, or for it to be always kind of closed off. But, so you're, like I said, bringing it kind of back to creativity. I feel, and I've always felt this way, that, as creatives, we just have this like ability to like download, right? Like it just happens, and it's like split second sometimes, right? And I'm interested, based on your abilities, where you think, and because you're a musician, right, where creativity comes from, like your feelings on that and what that means to you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So I won't pretend to be a neuroscientist, but what my understanding of the latest sort of studies are is that our intuition comes in through sort of the right brain, which is where we typically think of creatives having their information sort of being processed. I will tell you my belief as of now, and this is based off of the science as well as kind of just my own experience with it. Reserve the right to change my mind here. But what I understand as of today is that I really think that our brain is like a radio receiver. And in the same way that you can't see the wind, or, you can't see the air necessarily coming out of your air conditioning vent or something like that per se, the radio waves, the information, the download, as you say, is there, but it's being received like a radio wave, and your brain is the radio basically being tuned to receive it. So some people, when they have these moments where it's like a download or what have you, it's like that flow of information is coming to you. And that's my sense of how we might receive something that we would have no logical left brain way of being able to come up with. I'm a little skeptical that everything that's creative comes from another world. I don't so much believe that. I really do think that like it's just part of our DNA to be creators. Like that's what we came here to do. Everything you have, everything that anyone that's listening or watching has was once a thought, and thoughts become things. So I do think that human beings are just sort of endowed with a birthright to create, but also there's some things like writing music that I have no idea, like what some of the stories are that I've written. I just kind of go and just do it.
I love that. I do think you're right too. I mean, we're trained so much to kind of rely on left brain that unless you're in a creative industry, you've kind of got this, like, I'm not creative, I'm not this thing, but it is an inherent kind of thing. Both are inherent, right? But kind of having that balance between that strike of inspiration and all of the logical things that lead you to that inspiration at the same time, right? Because you're taking things in, especially as a creative, right? You're taking things in around you. But then there's that, I guess sometimes it's that like strike of whatever it is that kind of puts it over the edge sometimes for me. So Okay, let's just go into this now because it's just right off the tip of this. If people aren't open, right, because you've gone through this, right, mm-hmm. how do you become open to something like that, right? Like how can, I guess, really enhance our ability to download and even just lean into our own like voyance, whatever that may be, how would you go about doing that if you were to either do it again or even for how it happened to you?
Yeah. Well, kind of staying with my theory about the brain being the radio mm-hmm. that receives the radio waves. I think that if the brain is in the right frequency or the right state, then it can happen. So like, let's say somebody is partaking in some sort of, recreational drug or they're maybe had a few beers and they're buzzed or something. That might be a little bit of a window for them to experience either seeing something or having these sort of profound thoughts, right? Like that's kind of one of the jokes of people that like smoke weed. It's sort of like, yeah, man, like I just feel like, the world would be such a better place. And a lot of musicians that I've worked with, like they partake. I don't necessarily have to because my drug is meditation. Like that's not a judgment on people that partake in a drug. I think it's totally cool. You do you. I just don't necessarily need to do that in order to get my creativity, because for me, the way that I sort of stay in alignment or stay in that right frequency is through meditation. It's training my mind to not go to these really crazy states that we consider normal in today's culture. Mm-hmm. That's normal is kind of a myth. I feel like what we're used to in today's society, like the go, the constant having something to do, having boxes to check off, and just never really checking out and being able to allow ourselves to rest. Mm-hmm. That's where anxiety comes from, So my sense is that for me, the reason that it all started coming back in a more consistent way is because I decided to start meditation. Like really crazy idea, but I had tried everything and I was like, oh my God, fine. You really don't like, I was such a skeptic. I thought all this stuff was bogus, and it took me having to try that to get into this place where I was like, okay, whoa, I don't know what just happened, but that was really cool. It was really exciting to see the world open up, and I just kind of got hooked and kept doing it. So I think that that's how people can do it more. Like I think if you want to experience it more, that was just my way.
So how did you get started because I don't, I'm very type A. I'm very probably similar to how your former self was and going, I can't even quiet my mind. I can't, whatever. So how do you, because the more that I read about it and the more that I talk to people like you, it's become very apparent to have this ability to, I call it maybe even self-policing, or just a time to sit with yourself and kind of release all of that go and all of the things and the tasks. So how did you get going with it, that it, even from a place of skepticism?
Yeah. When I was in college, I actually had struggled with some depression, and I did what every kid that's trained in Western culture does. They, go online and then they go to a doctor. And so my doctor did what he was trained to do, which is give me a pill. And for about a year, I felt lifeless and numb and just sort of like, just that blah feeling. And it's not to say that medicines aren't effective, because the medicine did what it was supposed to do. It balanced me out. It sort of helped. And so I'm not knocking medicine or anybody that takes medicine. I think that's completely fine. But for me, 7 years later, it was like, okay, I can't do that again. Like I just cannot go back to that sort of just blah state. So I kind of started doing some research, and everybody was talking about the meditation buzz. Like that was even in mental health kind of the new thing. So I started trying it, hated it, absolutely hated it at first. I was like, what in the world am I doing? This is terrible. I'm thinking about my grocery list, I'm thinking about the breakups that I've had. I'm thinking about, I got to take the dog out, like just all the things that come to your mind.
Yeah.
And what a good meditation teacher will tell you is like, that's the surface. Don't identify with it. Don't observe it. Just keep going. Just stay with it. The irony is you are meditating. that is a part of the meditative practice, is going through that sort of superficial line. So you're
Really?
not doing
Okay.
it wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's allowing your mind to unwind. So, and then I just kind of stuck with it, and I started trying some guided meditations. There are some meditations that you can do that kind of allow you to visualize connecting to the other side. And so there's other things that you can do to really experience it or explore it.
Yeah.
The latest is that there's a technology called binaural beats.
Yes.
And binaural beats can help you to get into a particular brainwave state. Alpha or theta would be like a really relaxed state. Theta is the state that you go into. It's considered the meditative or imaginary state. And it's the one that you go into literally right before you fall asleep. Or
Yeah.
it's the one that you have right as you wake up.
Yeah.
So those are the states that you experience, kind of this like, oh my gosh, wow. There's something bigger. That's the meditative state.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to venture to guess it's probably part of the reason that half of my ideas come in that space where I'm like, and of course it like starts it all over again because I've got to get my phone out and type in whatever before it goes. But yeah, that makes total sense. I love that.
And how many musicians or creatives like yourself have had downloads in the shower?
Yes.
It's relaxed, that sort of monotonous drone of the water hitting the tile or whatever. And it's warm, and it's sort of relaxing your nervous system. It's easing everything in your body. And your mind is like, okay, I'm safe. It's okay. I don't have to have my defenses up right now. And that's when everything comes in.
Oh my God. So what's your music process like now? What is that? And how does just any part of that process really? I'm assuming part of it involves meditation, but what do you go through to get to kind of like beginning end of a song?
Well, here recently, I've been waking up with a lot of melodies from my sleep. So there's that.
Okay, then.
I've had people that have texted me, like my manager, Anya, she texted me last year, and she had like a dream, and she was told she's supposed to tell me the title of a song and like some of the lyrics. And I was like, oh my God, these are great. So little things like that will happen. But the standard, like 9 out of 10 times, I play piano. So everybody thinks I play the guitar, I think, because I live in Nashville. It's like, you're supposed to. It's like a municipal, like ordinance or something.
Like a rite of passage. You're like, I have to play the,
Exactly. But I play the piano. So my deal is I'll just sit and I'll just kind of allow whatever feels right to start to play out. And I'll just start playing a melody, and I'll kind of stay with it. And then the lyrics come to me. Then the story will come to me. And sometimes I'll literally see it sort of like in my mind's eye.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Other times I'll be driving and just, when you're just kind of like tuned out, you're on the freeway or whatever. And then I'll hear a melody in my head. And that's again when I'm just like really relaxed. So then it's terrible because then I have to pull over, pull out my phone, do a iPhone audio note or whatever.
Do. Yeah, whatever you got to do to get,
exactly.
To get
I have probably thousands of those in my phone.
Wow.
So it's, and they're all like great, and that's wonderful. But that's my process. It's a little kooky. It's a little weird, but I would venture to say probably a lot of musicians, at least the ones that I know, have those same type of experiences. So.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's that far from how I work, and I'm in, the branding marketing industry. It's visual versus audio, because that's one thing. I mean, I always considered myself kind of what do they call that? Multi-potentialite. Have you ever heard that word? Or where it's very, like, it was one of those things when I was growing up, I was like, I like so many things, and I could go into a bunch of different things, but I have no idea what that means, right? So, but music has been one of and it's probably the only class I ever failed in college too, literally, where I was like, music blows my mind how people can kind of put that together. Yeah. But the process that you're kind of describing is very even similar to my own, just being in different industries. But how have you gotten to the point that you come across as being very trusting of yourself and trusting of your gut, even being able to take that sort of thing and pull over on the side of the road? And that's one thing that I've noticed in talking to other creatives, be it, generally they're across like graphic design and copywriting and things like that. But we've got a lot of, we're dealing with clients all the time. And those clients kind of they either put a damper on it, or they're, other creatives are like pressing in on how we feel about ourselves or whatever. How have you gotten to the place that you can totally trust what you're putting out or putting down, or feeling like it's worth it?
Yeah. Well, what you're describing is interesting. A client maybe not connecting with the creative image or whatever that you've put out there. And it's such a crazy thing to think that somebody is leasing out their creativity to you.
Yes.
And then expecting it to be what they want. So it's a little interesting. But that being said, I would just say, for all the folks who do what you do, and yourself included, like, have some grace for yourself.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
But I will also say, I really believe that self-trust comes from doing growth work, like healing, inner child healing, psychological, whether that's therapy or meditation or all of the above. I really believe that we get taught in a lot of ways to distrust ourselves. One of the big buzzwords that's out there right now is narcissism. Yeah. And one of the hallmarks of narcissistic abuse is to be gaslighting is the word, but gaslit. Yeah. Or I guess whatever you would say. Yeah. So gaslighting is this idea of your reality should be questioned. Even people who aren't narcissistic that maybe unintentionally gaslight. So, somebody has an experience, they see it through their own two eyes. It doesn't necessarily fit the puzzle piece of your experience. You saw it a different way. Does that therefore mean that that person is wrong? It's like, no, actually it's having a tolerance for the way both people experienced it. So I think that, like, even as children, we get raised into a culture where we're constantly trying to see ourselves through the eyes of other people. How do I look today? Is my hair okay? Does this go with that? Does my shirt go with my pants? Is mom going to be okay with this B- that I got on my math test? We're constantly evaluating ourselves based off of other people's opinions. So why wouldn't we start to distance ourselves from our own sort of inner being? So I think it's a mental health crisis, actually. The ability to trust ourselves also directly is connected and directly proportionally connected to our relationships and the ability to trust other people. So Brene Brown has a wonderful acronym for trust, and it's braving. It's a seven-letter word. Boundaries. So can you honor your own boundaries and honor somebody else's boundaries? R, reliability. Can you not just do it once, but can you do it reliably? A, accountability. So can I then hold you accountable if you cross a boundary of mine? Can I hold myself accountable? So I went into the candy jar and had a few, whatever, M&Ms or something, and I really told myself this week, so I got to hold myself accountable, right? Then V for the vault. So what you say to me stays in trust, and I'm not going to go share it. That one's pretty obvious with trust. I, integrity, sort of staying in my integrity, which means like I'm going to not just talk about my values, but I'm actually going to practice them. In for non-judgment, which non-judgment is literally, you can come to me, Eric, when you are in epic struggle, and you can just be like, I'm in bad shape, Ryan. I need some help. Like, God, just let me vent or whatever. And I'm not going to be like, oh gosh, this is Eric again. I'm going to be like, oh my God, I see myself in him. How could I judge Eric? I've had moments like this before. And then G, this is the one I hated, which is generosity. And it's this concept that I can assume the most generous thing about you when something really catches my attention that might irritate me. So you might have to be 20 minutes late to a coffee, meeting or something like that with me. But if my first thing is, Eric, always lazy, I'm sure he just thinks that I'm like, third, fourth priority on the list. So of course he would be late. So braving, BRAVING, and that's how you establish trust with yourself. It's how you establish trust with others.
Wow.
It's directly connected. And that's something I think that like the better we can do, it's going to be so easy for us to trust our intuition and pull over on the side of the road when you have that like creative hit, because you're worth it. What you bring to the table is worthy. You know that it is.
Yeah.
So to me, you're so spot on to connect those two.
I love that. Oh my God. Look at this. Everybody better be writing this down right now. How long have you been like practicing this? How long have you like, cause I mean, I know the author, I've never heard of this kind of concept before, but how long have you been like kind of implementing this?
Gosh, really ever since her book came out. I'm trying to think which one it comes from, because she's written like 4 books. I was
going to say she has a few out.
Yeah. I would say it feels like 4 or 5 years that I've had that sort of concept, that the braving acronym. I've had that concept for self-trust.
I love
but
that.
My mental health journey started when I was in college. When I started the medicine and everything, and I was just really struggling, as a lot of college kids do. I started going to see a counselor, and I've just always thought it was important. I think everybody, just like they have a doctor, or whatever, I think everybody should have a counselor. That's my bias. It doesn't work for everybody, right? Talk therapy is not for everybody, but I think most of us could even get something out of 9-10 sessions or something like that. You don't have to go for years like I do.
Yeah, just to be able to get it out, just to be able to, put it to somebody that's non-biased, really.
Yeah, and have somebody validate you. And when you start to go down that like not trusting yourself path, somebody that's independent and trained can go, hey, let's get back on to the path, right?
Yeah.
And you can't really do that for yourself in the beginning, at least. So
yeah.
Oh
my. Okay, so I'm gonna 2 things for you. Number 1, what's one thing that you would want to share with anybody listening right now? It can be on topic, off topic, anything that you're feeling, and then I want to know about your craziest mediumship experience, because that question was coming.
Okay. Gosh, one thing I would want to share with anybody.
It also can be just a recommendation of something. I love book recommendations, anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I would say, I think most of us get taught that there's something about us that's inherently bad, that, especially coming from like the faith tradition that I do. So maybe this is my own projection on you and your audience, but growing up in the South, it's the Bible Belt. And part of the theology is that there's like inherent evil in each and every one of us. And I actually think it's just the flip. I think we come here like pure, perfect little beings, and we get socialized into a world which is very imperfect. And we're wired for struggle, so don't get me wrong in saying that like I think each of us is perfect. But my sense is that we start to absorb at a very young age a lot of shame. And so shame is this, I am bad, I am, I have a defect, so whether that's your sexuality, whether that's your race or your ethnicity, whether that's the fact that you were the slowest reader in 2nd grade, whether that's the fact that you had to wear glasses, whether that's the fact that you were chubby or you still struggle with your weight, it's something inherent in you that, you're broken. Versus we're all wired for struggle. Those struggles look different for each person. And the difference between guilt and shame is very, very important. Most people think they're the same. They're not. They're actually 180. Guilt is, I've done something bad. So guilt is, I'm getting ready to change lanes and I cut the lady off in the other lane. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I did something bad. I'm a great person. I normally knock it out of the park. I'm a great driver. But in this case, I made a mistake. Shame is, I am bad. I'm fill in the blank. And that, there's no window for improvement. I'm dumb versus that was dumb. I'm fat versus I'm heavier than I'd like to be, but there is a way for me to lose weight. It's like the difference between your static versus you're agile. And so that to me is something that like is kind of like my, if I had a bully pulpit, that's what I would be preaching to the people right now, because it disconnects you from it disconnects you from everything that's good, your relationships, your own sense of self-worth, your intuition, your own spiritual abilities. So that's kind of my message right now. And I think that's the kryptonite. That's the kryptonite for us, shame.
Yeah. And I think it becomes, just speaking from my own experience, it becomes very normal. So it's hard to realize that that's what's going on. It's hard to realize that that is kind of like that damper is there.
Yep.
And it springs up, right? Like it comes up in moments of, well, I don't want to do this, or this shouldn't be, I need to remove myself from this situation, or whatever it is. But most other times it's kind of laying just below, So thank you for bringing that up, because I think that's super important. And as I speak with more creatives and just kind of think more inwardly about the whole thing, it's so emotion driven, right? That all of this has to totally impact it. So thank you for that.
100%. Yeah.
Now, not on topic of anything other than just my idle curiosity here. Can you give us the craziest, or maybe your most kind of impactful psychic experience?
Yeah. Well, there have been many, and it's not because of me, right? I'm not trying to like steal the clout here from the spirit world. I do my best to be a clear channel, but I've had some pretty cool experiences. Let me see if I can come up with like one or two, and I'll be quick about it. But
sure, yeah.
The first one I could tell you was really, I walked into actually a group event. So there were multiple people in the room. I would say at least 15, maybe 15 or 20. Mm-hmm. And so it's weird. It's like there's this radar thing that happens. And imagine that there's like 5 doors in front of you, and you just you feel pulled to the left. Like that's kind of how it is for me. You want to go through the first door or the second door to the left. Well, for me, like that's when I'm doing a group reading, kind of what it's like. And then I know generally the area, and then I start to receive information about the person who's on the other side. Mm-hmm. And I just immediately felt that this person was a creative, that they were showing me all these different instruments. They played drums, bass, trumpet, and they were really quite a character. Like they were a hoot. Like they were up there it was almost like an SNL skit. So I'm like seeing them do all this stuff, and they're being really silly. And I start describing them. I get a name. I want to be honest, I'm not comfortable sharing the person's name, but it is somebody that's quite famous.
Sure.
And I didn't know that at first. And it just so happened that one of their best friends and somebody that they had written music with, mind you, this person is like played in an act, like a band that's like a big deal. So like okay. I said it, you would know it.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying all of this, and this person goes, yeah, that makes sense to me. That's my best friend. So-and-so, they played for the band. So-and-so, and they passed away. They took their own life. So, I mean, it was one of these really like, just like, oh my God, I'm channeling somebody that's famous and I didn't even know. So it's like one of those type of things, but they are just normal people,
Well, sure. Yeah. Uh-huh.
It was interesting. And I actually didn't know the person that I was reading for. I didn't know who she was. Mm-hmm. Because most of us don't know the songwriters, right? We know the famous person that's on stage mm-hmm. or on the album cover, but we don't know the people that are actually in the background doing the music or whatever. Yeah. So, and she's worked with Taylor Swift. She's worked with like really big name people, mm-hmm. and so of course I know her now, but it was just one of those like major like, whoa, we are all so connected. Yeah. So that was impactful for me, because I think it was like one of my kind of like all time like high up on the charts, like in terms of like recognition, like who this person would be. Yeah. The second experience is actually, it's one of those like murder mystery type of readings. Okay. And so once again, another group reading. It was for a birthday. And I had gone across the room. I had probably read for every single person. And as I always do at the very end, I just ask, did I not get to anybody, or is there anybody that has anybody that they'd like me to try to kind of dial up? It's not how it works, but we can always try, right?
Yeah.
And there was one girl, I felt so bad for her. She was sitting off to the right, kind of like right in my blind spot. So I don't know if it's that I didn't see her or just nobody had come through for her. Mm-hmm. But she mentioned that she had somebody in the spirit world that she wanted to connect to, and she just wanted to see if I could kind of tune in for her. So I did. And I had a grandfather that had come through, and that was in fact who she wanted to come through. And he was I saw him writing. So he showed me himself writing, and she validated that because he was actually the editor-in-chief of the local newspaper in their small town in Kentucky. And as it turns out, he was doing a story on somebody that, locally was pretty famous. I think the person actually was like an attorney, and it was kind of a scandal about this person being like really in some illegal activity, possibly the mob or something, and they offed him. Yeah. And so she asked me, she was like, we've never known what happened. We just know that he was at a gas station, and just all of a sudden we get a call, and he had been robbed, or he had been shot.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, that person did it. And I gave them the name, and they were like, that is exactly what we've always thought, but the police never really acted on it. Yeah.
Wow.
So in many instances, people want to connect to the other side to get some sort of closure or peace. Sure. And this is like one of those variations of it. When somebody dies in a way that's mysterious, and something like this is just like so, first of all, it's violent, which is terrible. Yeah. But also like it just feels like there's loose ends. Like there's not totally justice. And so mediums can sometimes be a bridge. And in that instance, I had all these like really cool, like positive, loving things. And all, we like end on this sort of like true crime note.
Yeah.
So that was really fun for me. I mean, I say fun, it's a tragic, terrible thing. But as a medium, it was fun for me because there was a lot of stuff going on, and I just was able to track it. And I was like, dang, I did good work. And sometimes I do this and I'm like, man, I was like 75% today. I need to meditate more, sleep better or something. Yeah. But yeah, in this case, I was really proud of the work that we were able to do together, because she was helping sort of validate, like, yeah, I think that was the henchman or whatever. So we put it together. It was a fun experience, but I was also glad that I was able to provide them some validation that, they weren't crazy. They were right. He was offed, and it was the person that they had suspected. And she didn't tell me any of that in the beginning. Yeah. So
that's huge. Oh my God. I mean, I'm totally a believer. I'm totally down with everything that you're putting out. I am interested how people can find you, how people can book to have readings, how people can book to have Reiki done by you, where people can listen to your music, all those good things. So can you give us the rundown?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I am on Instagram, so you can get me at the Ryan Hagan on Instagram. And then my website to book, which you can get to there from my Instagram page. Mm-hmm. My website to book is musicmedium.co, like .co. It's not .com. So that's my booking page. And yeah, you can see all the services that I offer. I have clients that actually book packages and come to me regularly for like coaching or energy work. Mm-hmm. Some just come to me kind of onesie twosie, like just to get a reading. I have a lot of people that want to sort of test the psychic and, which is fine. That's part, you're paying for a service. So the person ought to be able to perform for you. Yeah. So you can get me there, but I also have, I put a lot of work into my socials because I want to promote, positive messages and maybe things that make people think. So I'd love for people to follow me on that journey as well. And I'm also really available. So if people want to email me or DM me or something, I love to meet new folks.
Great. So, I always love to, I'm the same way. I love to hear that. So, okay, everybody go follow the Ryan Hagan on Instagram. Do it to it. I'm going to. Thank you so much for doing this with me. It's been a pleasure. And as with all these conversations, some amazing little nuggets came out of it. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric.